what Queen Camilla realized as she sat alone inside the private. Study of Clarence House was not the loss of a fleeting argument, but the total evaporation of a 30-year illusion. When a high-level royal financial dossier was returned to her desk with every single one of her independent funding requests quietly struck through by the royal treasury. In cold red ink, the terrifying reality of her position became undeniable. She had spent a lifetime methodically climbing to the absolute summit of the British monarchy, maneuvering through unprecedented scandals and securing the ultimate crown upon her head, only to discover that she did not possess the keys to the vault. The realization hit her with a devastating clarity that no title or tiara could mask. The vast multi-billion-pound machinery of the Crown estate belongs entirely to the bloodline, and despite her remarkable elevation, she is simply a temporary tenant living on borrowed time and borrowed wealth. By the end of this video, you will understand the profound institutional warfare that has quietly fractured the royal household. We will unpack the secret, desperate commercial power grab. Camilla, attempted as King Charles's health vulnerabilities, became impossible to ignore, and how Prince William and Princess Anne uncovered the forensic paper trail of her ambitions. You will see how the House of Windsor utilized its most ruthless weapon, administrative protocol, to execute a silent and devastating retaliation. Ultimately, you will witness the moment Camilla was forced to confront the staggering commercial desperation of her reality, realizing that without the active protection of the king, she owns absolutely nothing. To comprehend the sheer psychological magnitude of this collapse, we must first examine the fortress of absolute power Camilla believed she had permanently secured. For over 3 decades, her ascent was a masterclass in strategic endurance and billionaire public relations. She navigated the treacherous waters of intense public hatred following the tragic death of Princess Diana, systematically working from the shadows to erode the saintly memory of the late Princess of Wales. Slowly and deliberately, Camilla replaced Diana's loyalists within the palace walls with her own trusted circle of advisors. When King Charles finally ascended the throne, placing the Queen Consort's crown upon her head, her victory appeared absolute and unshakable. She had successfully transitioned from the most controversial figure in modern British history to the most proximate voice to the sovereign. With King Charles deeply reliant on her emotional support and daily guidance, Camilla began to operate with a dangerous sense of invulnerability. She looked out at the sprawling royal estates, the priceless art collections, and the ancient sovereign grants, and believed that her proximity to the monarch granted her ownership of the institution itself. During the early days of Charles's reign, she utilized this immense influence to subtly elevate her non-royal children, attempting to integrate Tom and Laura into the fringes of the royal ecosystem. She genuinely believed that her long game had conquered the institutional resistance of the House of Windsor, assuming that her private family would forever enjoy the privileges of the royal umbrella. But that is the fatal flaw in the illusion of absolute power. It blinds you to the cold legal realities of the system you are trying to manipulate. The catalyst for her ultimate undoing began not with a family feud, but with the undeniable reality of King Charles's declining health. As the monarch stepped back from major public duties to focus on his medical treatments, a massive power vacuum opened at the heart of the palace. For Camilla, this was not a moment for quiet reflection or uncomplaining sacrifice, but a terrifying ticking clock. She realized that her entire safety net, her grand lifestyle, her security apparatus, and her unchecked influence were tied directly to the heartbeat of a vulnerable king. Driven by what can only be described as staggering commercial desperation, she initiated a deeply secretive administrative maneuver to secure her long-term financial independence before the crown passed to Prince William. Behind closed doors, Camilla and her private advisors began drafting unprecedented proposals. She attempted to secure independent, long-term commercial revenue streams by quietly linking her private charitable trust with high-yield sovereign assets. She sought to establish permanent royal warrants for businesses associated with her extended family and tried to lock in multi-decade leases on key royal properties that would remain active even after Charles's reign ended. What looked like routine philanthropic and administrative restructuring was, in reality, a massive institutional overreach. Camilla was frantically attempting to build a self-sustaining financial empire, essentially trying to siphon sovereign wealth into a private Parker Bowles trust to ensure she would never have to answer to Prince William when the inevitable transition of power occurred. However, Camilla severely underestimated the forensic vigilance of the individuals who actually control the monarchy's future. The discovery of her financial maneuvering did not happen through leaked tabloid rumours, but through the cold, unyielding scrutiny of Princess Anne and Prince William. As the Prince of Wales and the Duke of Cornwall, William possesses absolute legal authority over the sprawling financial empire of the Duchy of Cornwall, while Princess Anne operates as the undisputed guardian of royal protocol and institutional integrity. When Camilla's discretionary funding, requests and property lease proposals were routed through the Privy Purse for final authorization, they landed directly on the desks of the King's most fiercely protective heirs. Working with a devastatingly analytical precision, William and Anne audited the paper trail. They identified every subtle attempt to divert royal resources toward Camilla's private initiatives. Princess Anne immediately recognized the strategic danger, seeing the moves not just as a financial drain, but as a direct threat to the structural integrity of the crown. Prince William, driven by a profound, heavily guarded duty to protect the legacy of his mother and the future inheritance of his wife. Catherine saw Camilla's actions as an unforgivable institutional betrayal. He recognized that the Queen Consort was using his father's illness as a smokescreen to enrich her own bloodline at the expense of the Windsor legacy. For William, who carries the silent, enduring grief for Diana, this was the exact kind of exploitation he had sworn to eradicate from his future court. The retaliation that followed was immediate, silent, and flawlessly executed through the channels of administrative protocol. There were no public reprimands or dramatic confrontations that Camilla could twist into a narrative of victimhood. Instead, Prince William simply weaponized the legal framework of the institution against her. Utilizing his immense financial authority, he quietly froze all discretionary funding pathways that connected the Duchy of Cornwall to Camilla's private trusts. Princess Anne systematically intercepted the property lease applications, legally classifying them as non-compliant with sovereign trust regulations. Within a matter of days, the sprawling commercial safety net Camilla had desperately tried to weave was entirely dismantled by the stroke of a pen. The true depth of her sudden powerlessness was driven home through a brilliantly orchestrated visual humiliation. Camilla had planned to host a highly publicized, lavish reception at Buckingham Palace to officially launch one of her newly restructured charitable foundations, an event she intended to use as a global showcase of her independent royal authority. But just 48 hours before the international press was scheduled to arrive, a quiet directive was issued by the Lord Chamberlain's office. The event was abruptly downgraded in status, stripped of its sovereign funding, and relocated to a minor secondary venue. In a devastating psychological blow, the prime reception slot at Buckingham Palace was immediately handed over to Catherine, the Princess of Wales, who hosted a majestic gathering honouring the legacy of Princess Diana's charitable work. As Camilla watched the live coverage from her private quarters, witnessing Catherine command the absolute centre of the world stage with effortless, uncomplaining dignity, the full weight of her institutional erasure came crashing down. The cancelled budgets and the revoked venues were not just temporary setbacks, they were absolute forensic proof that she had been structurally paralysed. The illusion of her empire had been shattered by the very system she thought she controlled. Realising that every administrative door was now locked from the outside by William and Anne, Camilla gathered the rejected financial dossiers. In a state of absolute desperation, she walked down the long, silent corridor toward King Charles's private study, preparing to cash in the final chip she had left. She was about to demand that the king overrule his own son, completely unaware that the trap had already snapped shut. When Camilla pushed open the heavy oak doors of the king's private study, she expected to find the fiercely protective partner who had spent 30 years defending her against the world. She placed the rejected financial dossiers onto his desk, the bright red lines of the Duchy of Cornwall's veto glaring against the parchment. She detailed the administrative blockade orchestrated by Prince William and Princess Anne, demanding that Charles invoke his sovereign authority to reinstate her funding and restore her cancelled reception. She waited for the familiar flash of royal indignation, the immediate phone call to his private secretary, the unconditional defense of her position. But what she received instead was a devastating, heavy silence. King Charles looked down at the financial documents, but he did not reach for his pen. Exhausted by his ongoing medical treatments and acutely aware of his own physical fragility, he recognized exactly what his son had done. William had not broken any rules, he had simply enforced them with ruthless precision. Charles understood that to override the Duke of Cornwall on matters of the duchy's wealth would require a public constitutional intervention, sparking a catastrophic civil war within the monarchy that he simply did not have the strength or the political capital to survive. He looked up at Camilla, his silence serving as the final verdict. He would not save her commercial empire. He chose the preservation of the crown over the financial elevation of her bloodline. That singular moment of quiet refusal exposed the staggering commercial desperation of Camilla's reality. Stripped of the king's active financial protection, the illusion of her absolute power completely shattered. The public sees a queen consort draped in priceless jewels and driven in state carriages. But the forensic reality is that these are merely institutional loans. She owns no sovereign land. She controls no royal treasury. Her attempt to funnel institutional wealth into her private charitable trusts was a desperate bid to create a self-sustaining financial anchor, precisely because she knew she possessed no inherent leverage of her own. Prince William's administrative blockade was not an act of petty revenge. It was a systemic lockdown, ensuring that the vast resources of the British monarchy remained permanently out of reach for anyone outside the direct Windsor bloodline. As Camilla's shadow court was quietly dismantled, the front gates of the palace opened to confirm the absolute authority of the new order. The stark contrast between Camilla's frantic financial scrambling and the pristine, unbothered dominance of Catherine, the Princess of Wales, became the defining narrative of the royal year. When Catherine stepped out to host the elevated charity reception at Buckingham Palace, she did not need to negotiate for funding or demand respect through back-channel mandates. Her power is intrinsic, derived from her uncomplaining dedication and her unshakable bond with the public. By honouring Princess Diana's legacy in the very venue Camilla had been evicted from, William and Catherine sent a flawless, undeniable message. The era of compromises and backdoor manipulation was officially over. Every subtle shift in palace protocol over the following weeks served as forensic evidence of this shifting hierarchy. Courtiers noticed that Camilla's internal requests were increasingly subjected to lengthy administrative reviews, while directives from the Prince and Princess of Wales were executed with immediate, unquestioned priority. The institution had silently reoriented itself around the future, isolating the Queen Consort in a gilded cage of her own making. She still holds the title, and she will continue to perform her public duties with a carefully practiced smile. But the underlying machinery of her influence has been entirely disabled. This story resonates so deeply because it exposes the ultimate limitation of strategic ambition when it collides with the cold, enduring reality of a true institution. Camilla spent a lifetime playing a brilliant calculated game to secure the crown, only to discover that the institution always protects itself first. She reached for permanent commercial power, and the system responded by legally paralyzing her, proving that while proximity to the throne offers the illusion of ownership, true power belongs only to those who carry the future of the bloodline. What do you think about Prince William's silent but ruthless strategy to protect the financial integrity of the crown? And how do you view King Charles's devastating refusal to intervene on Camilla's behalf? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and do not forget to subscribe for more deep analytical insights into the hidden mechanics of the world's most powerful institutions.